Hi everybody. So I want to talk a little bit about knives, one of our important kitchen tools. Once again, I'm here at Cessnon House in the kitchen, and in front of me, I'll show you in a moment. I'll adjust my camera, but I've got a number of knives here. So in our textbook, in the On Cooking book, they talk about different types of knives, and so I just wanted you to see some in real life other than like drawings and stuff of them, and talk a little bit about what they're used, what the different uses are. So I am going to pivot the camera down so you can see some knives, and you'll just see part of me. But I've got a number of knives here. So I've got some chef knives, which are shaped with that kind of distinct dropped section of the knife, and I've got some different sizes of chef's knives here and different brands. And then I've got a bread knife, which you can see the serrations up against my jacket there. I've got a slicing knife, which is just basically looks a lot like a chef knife, but not as deep on the length down there. And then I've got a fillet knife, which if I put it here on the counter, you can see I can flex that quite a bit. So fillet knives are flexible and shorter. I have a boning knife, and this one is not so flexible. A little bit of flexibility there, but not nearly as flexible. Then I've got a Japanese style boning knife here, so it's kind of shaped differently than the other boning knife. And then I've got some paring knives, a couple of the really smaller paring knives, which are used for more detail work. And then I've also got a bigger knife here. This is called a scimitar, and these are usually used for cutting larger pieces of meat. You can also use them for filleting certain types of fish, so that they're useful for some specific tasks. So what's the purpose of the different knives? Really has to do with what it is, what's your goal, what's your outcome, right? So with the chef's knives, they're kind of the most commonly used knives in a kitchen. So when we're cutting up vegetables, if we're portioning some smaller cuts of meat, if we're trying to mince things, slicing, a lot of times we're just going to be using the chef's knives for all of that. And again, the different lengths of them really have to do with what is most comfortable. So basically, the longer a knife is, then the more difficult it's going to be to control. So especially early on, most people usually are going to start out with a shorter knife. This is an 8-inch chef's knife, and this is kind of the typical length that people are more comfortable with. As you use it more, you'll get more comfortable with using a larger knife. The bread knife, that one's kind of obvious, right? Bread. But it also works well for other things. That serration, when there's different densities in something, so if something's hard on the outside and soft in the middle, oftentimes the bread knife is going to work really well for that. So if you try to slice a tomato, for example, the bread knife will do that well, because the serrations will help break through the tougher outside without crushing the middle. And the slicing knife, that's when we're trying to carve things. So if we've got a roast turkey, if we've got a roast of beef or something, and we maybe are carving that for customers, then oftentimes a slicing knife is going to work a lot better. The fillet knife, that flexibility that has, that I was demonstrating before, that's going to help stay up against bones on fish as we're removing fillets. The boning knife, you notice the tip of it's relatively thin, and that makes it so that we can navigate inside as we're removing bones from things. That would be very difficult to do with a real thick knife like the chef's knife. And then the paring knives, like I said, those are oftentimes going to be used for detail work, that when we're trying to shape things. And then again, lastly, that scimitar, kind of a specialized knife for doing fabrications. So that's a quick intro intro to some of the different knives. There are more knives out there as well, but these are probably the most common ones that we deal with in kitchens. And with that, we'll wrap it up, and good to see everybody.